in love with my psychiatrist, and he knew that, and he kept me for years as a patient until I was brave enough to leave him.
This woman's story about her therapist has gone viral and everybody's talking about it, but let's get into the story time. Hey beautiful people, how you all doing today? It's your girl Destiny here and welcome to my channel. How have you all been? Hope you guys are doing great. So today's video is a story time video and it's a blind story time. I haven't heard the story before. I know people are talking about it on the internet, but I want us to do it together. If we'll make the face together. You guys like that raw reaction when we make the face together? But anyway, this is the story of a woman who came to share how she fell in love with her therapist and her therapist allowed her. And in her story, she wanted to talk about how she was groomed and her therapist knew all along that she was in love with him, but the therapist allowed her to be in love with him, even though she was seeing not a therapist, it's a psychiatrist, not therapist. Let me take that. If ever I said therapist is as a psychiatrist, so the psychiatrist was saying she fell in love with him. She had a huge crush on him, and she eventually felt like it was mutual, and the doctor, the psychiatrist, knew exactly what he was doing and was leading her on all along. Even though she was seeing a psychiatrist, she was also seeing a therapist. This story is kind of like giving Dululu, Dululu, Dululu. Anyway, guys, let's go check out the story time and then we'll come back and talk more.
I fell in love with my psychiatrist, and he knew that, and he kept me for years as a patient until I was brave enough to leave him. Okay. I want to talk about it. Usually when I go on this app and I have a question, I have a bunch of videos that pop up, and I searched in love with my psychiatrist and nothing happened. So I would really like to discuss what happens when we fall in love with our mental health professionals, and most importantly, the fact that there are so many people, especially men, that are emotionally dead inside, that feel called to going into psychiatry and therapy so they don't have to feel their feelings, but they can feed off of the vulnerability of their mostly female patients. Okay. What do you guys think? I fell in love with my psychiatrist, and he knew, and he kept me until I had the strength to leave after 4 years. Here it is, part 1. So I decided to go back on ADHD meds after many years of being off of them. I was on them in my early 20s to help me get through college, and then I went off of them because they just weren't, like, the side effects were too much over the benefits. But then in my late 20s, I read this book, Taking Charge of Adult ADHD, and it absolutely changed my life. For my fellow ADHDers, there's so many good things in here. And the biggest thing that I took away was that it's very important for ADHDers to be on meds. So I decided to make an appointment with a psychiatrist. I just Googled psychiatry in the city that I lived in, and I went with the first one that came up, and I got an appointment within a month. And then I booked a 90-minute intake, and I show up to the intake, and this man is my age, and I can't help but notice that he's pretty attractive, this psychiatrist. Mm-hmm. I fell in love with my psychiatrist, and he kept me anyway, part 2. So in this intake, I kind of clocked that he was attractive in my age, but when I tell you that I've had a lot of couch time in my life, a lot of therapy, I just went right into it. I trusted him enough, of course, why wouldn't I, to tell him about my childhood trauma, my daddy issues, if you will, what I had went through, all of the relationship trauma that I had. I was 6 months sober at this time, but all of the drinking and substance use I used to do, and he just listened and nodded. And that's the thing about psychiatrists, is that they're good at pretending to listen. They can appear connected, but that doesn't mean that they're always connected.
Okay.
So I just felt really seen. And I also told him, I was like, look, I don't want to be on stimulant meds. So he listened to me and he put me on the non-stimulant ADHD med at the lowest dose just to figure out if it was going to work for me. I was in love with my psychiatrist and he kept me anyway, part 3. So I hadn't ever seen a psychiatrist before. When I was on meds in my early 20s, I only got meds from my primary care physician. So I didn't understand how psychiatry works. So because he was figuring out my med dose, I saw him every month and he just made me feel like I was his friend. He was really, really funny and cracked jokes and told me he was impressed with my running that I would do. And yeah, so of course I loved the attention that I got from him.
Exactly.
And it was in my 3rd session with him, because at this point we were all on Zoom, that I asked him.
Wow.
I said, hey, do you mind if I call you by your first name? And he's Pakistani, so I said his first name wrong. And he said, well, it's pronounced this, but yes, of course you can. And he seemed so smug and happy with himself. And I know that that is because that was his first sign that him pretending like we're friends was working. And to be fair to me, I had only ever been to therapy before. I didn't realize that, it's important to call your doctor last name. I mean, I did know that. I did it with all my other doctors, but it just showed that the boundaries were blurring, and he liked that. Okay. So from then on, from my 3rd session on, I started calling him his first name. And then he just started turning up the volume on us being friendly. And he would ask me, for the first 6 sessions, he asked me, after the meds, he said, how's your bowels, bladder, and appetite? And I would say they're all normal. And then he would ask me any thoughts of harm. And apparently that's pretty common for psychiatry to ask those questions. Exactly. And then on our 6th session, when things were really, the chemistry was starting to be there before, like, I didn't realize it. I was like, oh, this man is just friendly. And he said, I have to ask this because it's a special interest of mine, but is there any thoughts of harm? Like I was special to him. And I said, no thoughts of harm. And he didn't ever ask me a clinical question again. He stopped asking me about my bladder, bowels, and appetite, and he stopped asking me about thoughts of harm. So to me, I would just show up and he was like a therapy appointment every month. So I was seeing him every month and just gaining more and more respect for him because he would just tell me these little things about his successes and all of the cool things that he was doing in his life. And it made me fall for him, honestly. And he was really good at listening. And I mean, he's a Pisces, right? So of course he's going to be there and be able to go deep with my feelings, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't extracting from them. Anyway, so I would beg him to let me see him every week. Beg him, because my therapist at the time, he was fine. He wasn't a predator, but he was fine. He just wasn't doing very much for me. And so that therapist retired and I got a new therapist. And this new therapist, who is a 75-year-old woman with a PhD, she was pretty helpful. So I stopped asking my psychiatrist, begging, honestly, to be my therapist and let me see him more, right? Which also should have been a red flag. But then I started focusing on this therapist. However, I would tell the therapist how obsessed I was with my psychiatrist, and she didn't do anything about it. She just was interested. She also loved stories about my dating life, and yeah, she also was getting supply from me in her own way, but that's for another part. So yes, so I got a new therapist who actually helped me. She taught me CBT, EFT, all of these different modalities. And so I went back to just being okay with seeing Irfan once a month, while he was giving me these little breadcrumbs of making me feel special, telling me about his professional achievements, telling me about how he's getting international recognition. And it worked. I was really impressed. I got a new therapist. I stopped begging my psychiatrist to see me weekly. And that is when the intermittent reinforcement started. Some sessions he'd be warm and kind and wonderful and let me in on little parts of his life and like be vulnerable with me or pretend. Other sessions, he would be cold and clinical and detached. And you know what that did? It made me work harder in our next sessions. It did. And it started the addiction that I had to him. 100%. And he knew exactly what he was doing. This man gives lectures on trauma and attachment theory. He used his psychiatric training to manipulate me and get me hooked. And guess what? It worked. In January of 2024, I was hit by a car turning left as I was going through a green light. And it was the night before my next appointment with my psychiatrist. So I was like, okay, I'll still be able to go to my appointment on Zoom. I'm okay. But I did make an appointment with an urgent care the next day just to get checked out. I had bruising on my abdomen and a perforated eardrum. And the provider at the urgent care said, I do not feel comfortable treating you. You need to seek emergency care now. You may be internally bleeding. But it was 11 o'clock in the morning and my appointment with my psychiatrist was at 2. So I decided that I was going to wait so I could see my psychiatrist and not have to reschedule because I was looking forward to my appointment with him so much. I look back at that time and I'm just like, oh my God, I put my own life under seeing him. I was fully addicted to him at this point. And you know what happened is that I showed up and I told him that I may be internally bleeding and he didn't stop the appointment. He didn't say, you need to take care of yourself. Go get emergency care now. He let me continue and just tell him about how much I loved him and how grateful I was for him. Because that was really what most of our appointments were, is me just like pouring myself out because he was so good at the intermittent reinforcement. Yeah, I got some warmth from him that appointment. So that was January 2023. And I also told my therapist about this. She said nothing. After I risked my life to see him, that's when he really started turning up the intimacy in our appointments. However, he was really smart and knew the professional lines like the back of his hand. So he would comment on my appearance, but not compliment my appearance. So I would come on screen and he would say, oh, you curled your hair. Or I would come on screen and he would say, oh, you're wearing glasses. And of course I felt seen and excited that he was noticing these things about me. I didn't realize at this time that he had feelings for me too. I thought I was holding them all by myself. So I was so excited when he noticed my glasses that I ran and showed him my other pair. And he said, I prefer turtle shell glasses. So even though I usually wear contacts, I'm wearing these turtle shell glasses in these videos because just in case he sees them ever, he'll see me in his favorite glasses. He did tell me he likes the turtle shell.
Oh, Lord.
Anyway, it was just inappropriate things like that. Little teeny things that he let me in. And all this time, my best friend is an emergency medicine physician. And she told me, she said, Kendra, one of these days, your psychiatrist, she would use his name, is going to say, I can't be your doctor anymore. I want to be with you. I want to be with you so bad. I can't be your doctor. I'll see you in 2 years. So my best friend, who's a doctor, she picks up on stuff like that. So even she knew that our relationship was crossing boundaries and getting weird, but that was like, that became my dream, was for my psychiatrist, I almost use his name, to do that. And I told him about Brianna saying that, my best friend, who's the emergency medical doc. I told him that she would tell me that, and he just would be silent. He didn't disagree, but he didn't agree, you know, and that was, weaponized neutrality was his favorite game to play, right? He didn't disagree with Brianna telling me that my psychiatrist had feelings for me, but he also didn't say that's inappropriate, let's change the subject. It was also around this time that I asked my psychiatrist if he had diagnosed me with anything other than ADHD when I had my initial diagnosis. And he said, yeah, I did. I said, oh, what did you diagnose me with? And he said, well, you had a lot of traumatic things happen to you in childhood because of your dad. And so I diagnosed you with other trauma and stressor related disorder. And that was the first little ping that I got of like, that was weird. Why would he keep that from me? I asked my, like, why wouldn't he tell me that? That seems important. He didn't tell me because he was using that information to manipulate me. He knew I had trauma and stressor disorder, and instead of helping me heal from it and telling me about it, he used it against me. January 2023, at this point, I was full-blown obsessed with my psychiatrist, and my therapist wasn't helping me, my psychiatrist wasn't helping me, he was feeding it. And then I got a boyfriend, and at first my psychiatrist wasn't really that keen, but then my psychiatrist realized that my boyfriend was a lot like my psychiatrist. And then I started talking to my psychiatrist about my sex life, about tracking my cycle, using the fertility awareness method. And my psychiatrist loved it. He didn't never say, this isn't inappropriate to your care, let's pivot. Oh, he just let me talk and talk and talk about my sex life. And I didn't get too deep, but about a year and a half in, and I would send my psychiatrist these emails just about how much I liked him and how I was so grateful for him, and put in a bunch of heart emojis. And this is really when he should have transferred my care, but you know, he waited. He liked what I gave him too much. And so even though my boyfriend did not meet my needs, my psychiatrist and my therapist both were like, you have to stay with him. There's nothing wrong with him not meeting your needs. I'm like, okay. And my psychiatrist was like, he's perfect, don't get wrong with him. And what was perfect about him was he wasn't meeting my needs. So I was still coming to my psychiatrist looking for emotional validation, which he would drip to me slowly. So my therapist, who I didn't know at this time had bad boundaries, but she did. I went to her because my boyfriend and I, after like more than a year together, we started having issues in the bedroom. And so I went to my therapist and she asked me, what does your psychiatrist think about this? And I said, I don't know. I haven't talked to my psychiatrist about this stuff because I have a crush on my psychiatrist and I don't want to tell him this intimate of stuff. And she said, well, you should tell him because I want a male's perspective. So at my next appointment with my psychiatrist, I told him, I said, today we're going to talk about my intimate life. And he said, oh. I said, yes. My psychologist, my therapist, asked what your opinion on it was. And I told her that I don't talk to you about this intimate stuff because I have a crush on you. And he looked down and smiled so big in that moment. He smiled so big. And I loved it. It's so gross thinking about it. And then I proceeded to give him 30 minutes of non-stop content about my intimate life with my boyfriend. And I actually recorded the whole thing because I was so excited about it. But now it makes me sick. I can't even listen to the recording. I've tried to start, but it's gross. Any ethical psychiatrist would have stopped me and said, Kendra, let's talk about your meds. Let's talk about your care. At this point, my meds were stable. And I was still seeing him every month. Yeah, that was a rough time. And it was pretty much his Christmas morning, the almost 2.5 years of grooming me to get me to talk about sexual things with him worked. And he got 30 minutes of nonstop content to use. I need to address 3 things. 1, people are asking me what my mental health diagnosis is. I do not have BPD. I do not have psychosis. I have ADHD, and I was experiencing extreme limerence with my psychiatrist. Limerence is a normal thing to happen to anyone who is experiencing hot and cold behavior from someone. And it happens more often in people with ADHD because we have dopamine dysregulation and rejection sensitive dysphoria. And guess what? My psychiatrist knew that and used it to his advantage. 2, I accidentally said my psychiatrist's first name in one of my videos. If you clocked it, good for you. I do not owe him anonymity. However, this is not about doxing my psychiatrist. This is about me sharing my story so other people can view predatory behavior in people in power. Okay? If anyone doxes my psychiatrist with his last name or city that he works in or clinic that he works in, your comment will be immediately deleted and you will be blocked. This is about protecting other victims, not doxing my psychiatrist. If you do some investigative work and you want to DM me about it, I'm open to that, okay? 3, I need to take a moment. Moment taken. It is so incredibly disturbing to me, the amount of people that are protectors in my comments, that are victim blaming me, especially the mental health practitioners in my comments using therapy speak to say that this situation that I was in was my fault or that I was delusional. Check yourself. You're giving me more ammunition to share my story because it just goes to show how absolutely messed up the mental health industry is and how protected people who do this kind of sick psychological manipulation are. So I will continue with my story tomorrow. I will see you all then. Welcome back to another installment of I Was in Love with My Psychiatrist and He Kept Me Anyway, Part 8. You all did some nasty work last night, and I had to turn off comments. People started posting my psychiatrist's first and last name, his picture in the comments. That was a jump scare. So, yeah, a few bad actors who wanted to be super sleuths got the privilege of commenting, mostly hate, let's be real, taken away for everyone. So at this point in the story, there are 2 main players. My psychiatrist, who's my age, who crossed major ethical boundaries, and my therapist, who is a 75-year-old woman with a PhD. Neither of these people at this point in the story I knew were crossing boundaries. I thought that everything was hunky-dory and that I was just in love with my psychiatrist and it was totally normal. Little did I know he was manufacturing everything so I could fall in love with him, because it was on him to set the professional boundary and not let attention build. So days after my psychiatrist's Christmas morning appointment from a few videos back where he got a crush confession from me, and then 30 minutes of non-stop intimate content that he did not stop me. My boyfriend and I broke up days later. So then I started dating this other guy. And this other guy, this new guy, was a therapist. And I was like, oh, great. Someone who will be able to emotionally meet my needs. Yeah, I'm not going to date another therapist again. So this therapist and I, we went for coffee. It was nice. Our second date was a hike. And on this hike, this therapist starts telling me about how he has a crush on one of his clients. And I thought to myself, okay, this is strange, but go ahead. Like, we're on a date, dude. Why are you telling me about a crush on one of your clients? But go off, King. So then he was saying, yeah, she's so attractive, and I think she likes me too. I go and visit her at work, and her coworkers say, oh, so-and-so talks about you all the time. And I was like, okay, where does she work? And he said, well, I shouldn't tell you that because I really shouldn't be visiting her anyway. I was like, okay, no problem. So then he continues and he said, yeah, she wears these red lacy panties and short skirts. And I know she wears them for me. And like alarm bells were going off in my head. Mind you, I had no idea that my psychiatrist had similar feelings towards me at this point. But I just thought, wow, this man is borderline predatory. And he said, yeah, and you know, she just is so attractive that I have to smash her mate before every session because I just have to get that energy out of me. And I was like, okay. And yeah, he just felt compelled to tell me, and I did not understand why. Now I do. So he told me about how he's right. The mental health industry. Shocker. So then at my next appointment with my psychiatrist, keep in mind, it had been 6 weeks of nonstop fun for this man. He got to use my crush confession and 30 minutes of content, for whatever he wanted to use it for, right? And if my psychiatrist was good at anything, it was being professional and acting professional and technically not crossing any lines. And he thought that he was so good at it, because he was good at it. But that doesn't mean he wasn't doing it. And so I told him, I said, yeah, Bo and I broke up. He had known about this other guy, my psychiatrist. I had mentioned him. And I told him that this new guy and I went on a date and we went on a hike. And I literally had no idea at this point, I'll say it again, that my psychiatrist was towards me. I almost said his first name again. I'm going to do my best to not. So I went to my psychiatrist and I told him this story about this man that I went on a date with, who's a therapist, is relieving himself before appointments and talking about his clients' panties and doing all of these other extremely inappropriate things, like visiting her at work. And this man, my psychiatrist, looked like he had seen a ghost and like he was gonna vomit, because he prided himself on being an extremely professional and buttoned up person. But here I was holding a mirror to him with exactly what he was doing, but a bumbling idiot telling me like how he was doing it without the fancy degree, without any of that. I look back on that now and it's just crazy. And so it just tainted all the fantasy material that I had given him the session before. Hi, I need to say something really important. And that's that it seems as though many people view what I'm going through as a crash out, what I'm doing as a mental health spiral. And of course it seems like that. I get it. It's an extremely dark thing to talk about, all of this that I went through. And I am sharing my story because it wasn't out there. No one else has shared a story like this. But I know that it happens a lot because people are in my DMs telling me that the same thing that I went through, they went through too. I am now in TikTok jail. I got a violation on the video where I talked about really the biggest damning evidence against my psychiatrist. And so because of that, I have to be really careful. So I'm going to do my very best to not be reactive and to share my story from a place of generosity, because the people in my DMs telling me that they've been through this too, it's keeping me going. It's not my mental health spiral. And I can understand that for some people in the mental health space, because they have been some of the loudest people to speak out against what I'm doing, it's hard to grasp that someone could have this level of predation in such a high place of power. So just in case my video doesn't get put back up, when everything changed was when my 75-year-old therapist, I went to her with intimate details, and she suggested I go to my psychiatrist with them. And I felt so excited and nervous to share that with him because I had such a big crush on him at the time. And I recorded all 33 minutes. So this is why, if my psychiatrist wants to come with me and like sue me for defamation, I have a 33-minute recording of me admitting I have a crush on him and speaking about extremely intimate details. It was in that moment that he really, really should have transferred my care. But that moment changed everything for him too, because that's when things really started getting deep between us. And this is where the story is going to go from now. It's going to be a good story. And I'm going to try to tell it all today. Just in case one of my videos does get banned so people can hear it. But just know, if you're concerned for my mental health, thank you. I am very good. More than good, actually. And I am actually a coach for ADHDers. It says it in my bio. And I help people work through self-limiting beliefs. I help people work through numbing with alcohol and cannabis, because these are the things that so many of us do to avoid our truths. And this is my truth and what I went through.
So obviously there's going to be a part 2, which is going to come up almost immediately. But guys, you guys let me know what you guys think about this story so far. Like, this is even a blind reaction for me because I haven't even heard the story, but the story has gone viral and everybody's talking about it. But yeah, like for me, first off, I have like few points which I'm not going to make this video too long, but the fact that this man was not reactive and she's seeing it as him being manipulative, is that not what therapists and psychiatrists do? They just try to really keep that neutral feeling. And the fact that therapist is an older woman and is telling her, go see your psychiatrist, probably the therapist is clocking some mental issue. That's why she keeps telling her to go back to her therapist. This is not me not validating what she's saying or a story. It's a story and it's for her to tell. But I just feel like it's given, even a definition of limerence is not limerence. She said limerence is when somebody pulls you hot and cold. No, limerence is a one-way thing where one person is seriously visualizing life with another person without the other person knowing or even just that's limerence. So I don't know whatever the story is leading, but it's giving me to Lulu. And I feel like you guys clock it if I'm the only one. I feel like the part where she went to talk about the intimate part, I feel like maybe her therapist did not tell her she wanted to, and that's why she had the recording of that. She wanted to get his reaction. Also, I feel like there was no dating a therapy boyfriend that told her those things. I feel like those are things she made up in her own head and she was telling her therapist. That's my own thought, too, allegedly. That's what I feel. Why do I feel that way? Am I the only one that feel that way? Please, you guys, let me know down in the comment section. But yeah, part 2 is coming up now. So let me know your take about this story down in the comment section. But as always, please be respectful. Here on this channel, we're allowed to disagree, but we do it in a very respectful way. So go ahead, feel free to share your thought, okay? Don't forget to share this video with somebody that you want to be part of the conversation, because that's what we do here. We have banging conversation. So go on and share this video. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, smash the like button, because this helps YouTube to push up my content for more people to see, and that will be you supporting this channel and this girl here. So go on and do that. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Deuces.